Hello and welcome to The Cutting Room, 1.21 gigawatts of movie analysis, trivia, and laughs from all the right movies. I'm John, and the two slackers with me are Matt.
Hello.
You're a slacker.
And Luke.
Hello.
You're a slacker.
Today, we've got a treat for just about everybody, I'd imagine. We're going back in time with the McFlys and the two Bobs to talk a true movie classic. We're sending you back to the future.
Lovely.
It was your choice, this one, Luke. So why do you want to talk about it?
Well, it's absolute movie magic. That's why I want to talk about it. A joy from start to finish. One of my earliest memories of watching movies, and I still get the same feelings now watching it. It's got great characters, iconic designs, incredible concept, and the writing is second to none in this kind of film. And I've talked about this in the past, but something that I feel has been lost in modern films. This is an absolute original idea. Most films now are sequels or remakes or adapted from blah, blah, blah. Most big budget films anyhow. But this one is the most original of original ideas. And I'm very much looking forward to revisiting it with you fellas.
Yeah, similar for me. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I can remember a time that I didn't know and love Back to the Future. It's been one of my favourite films basically my whole life. I mean, the characters are great. It looks fantastic. It's massively iconic. It was the biggest hit of the year that it came out in 1985, and it's still very highly thought of today. It somehow manages to be extremely 80s and timeless at the same time.
Yeah.
Loads of big talents involved in the film, loads of interesting stories about how the film was made, and Marty McFly. I mean, what a guy he is. If anyone ever told me they didn't like Marty McFly, I'd blame them. Without question.
That's on you.
Absolutely. But yeah, huge film, and we're going all in on it, which was always going to happen, wasn't it?
Yeah. Always.
Our density has brought us here.
You are my density.
And Matt, Back to the Future for you?
Yeah, it's very similar to what you said, John. It's just a film that's always been there. I am of the generation when this first came out, and it was just ever present. Growing up, it was either on TV or there was a copy in the house, whether it was video all the way through to Blu-ray. And it's one that comes up time and time again in the list of classics of this era, and for good reason. And I think actually it's a very interesting blockbuster to look at, because when you think about it, it's actually fairly light in terms of action. And apart from the time travel element, which is obviously, you know, a fairly substantial part of it, it's very much rooted in reality. So it's not Raiders, it's not Die Hard, it's not Ghostbusters. It doesn't have that like elevated fantasy feel to it, which makes it stand out. I think it's very unique in its field and of its time. And plus, this was an early podcast episode for us, which I wasn't on. So I'm just really excited to talk about it finally.
Yeah.
Great. Should be good then. So we're heading to Hill Valley 1985, then 1955 to talk Back to the Future. When eccentric scientist Doc Brown builds a time machine out of a DeLorean, skateboarding teenager Marty McFly is thrown back in time to 1955 and, after altering the course of history, must make his parents fall in love, save the Doc's life, and prevent his own erasure from existence. Sounds pretty heavy, that.
Yeah. What is
Too
this
heavy.
thing? Heavy.
Directed by Robert Zemeckis and written by Zemeckis and Bob Gale, Back to the Future was produced by Amblin Entertainment, distributed by Universal, and stars Michael J. Fox as Marty, Christopher Lloyd as the Doc, Leah Thompson as Lorraine Baines McFly, Crispin Glover as George McFly, and Thomas F. Wilson as Biff Tannen.
What are you looking at, butthead?
So how the cutting room works is that we discuss the movie by breaking it down into its key filmmaking components. So for Back to the Future, we're covering off the direction, the writing, the cast, the music, our own individual highlights, and then we'll each give the film a score out of 10. You both up for that?
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. All tens, I
Great.
imagine.
Well, up first then. Don't spoil it. Well, up first then. Don't Make Like a Tree just yet. We're talking about the director of Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis. Back to the Future was Robert Zemeckis' fourth film as director, after Beatlemania comedy I Want to Hold Your Hand, satirical comedy Used Cars,
Hi there!
and the action-adventure comedy Romancing the Stone. His most well-known movie, though, is surely Back to the Future. So how do we think Robert Zemeckis did here as the director? Matt?
I'm not actually the biggest fan of Zemeckis, but
Ooh,
yeah,
slammed.
slammed. Getting straight in there with a slamming. Straight in there with a slamming. You know me. Love to do that. But yeah, this one is easily his best work. And it is the one film I think, yeah, you know what? I can't imagine anyone improving on what he did here, to be honest, because where I think it's at its strongest is in its storytelling, because that is always very clear and it's very concise and it's very logical, because if you take all the different elements going on in this film, there's a hell of a lot going on and a lot of things that this film needs to establish. And a lot of that is in the writing, which we'll get to, but looking at it from a directorial point of view, just look at that opening credit scene at Doc's place, that camera pan over all the clocks that establishes theme and topic, the newspaper clippings in the background that tells us about Doc's character, so we learn he's an inventor, he's an eccentric, but he's poor. The news that's playing in the background that sets up the plutonium element of the plot, and then it ends with Marty entering, kicking his skateboard across the floor, which then bumps into the plutonium, so it ties everything together brilliantly. I mean, that is just brilliant visual storytelling. And I think what's really difficult to do with this story is to manage all those different elements that are going on, because at various times this film has to be exciting, it has to be tense, it has to be really funny, it has to be really romantic. It's set in 2 different time periods, and Zemeckis just juggles all those plates, keeps them spinning in the air so well. Because just look at the last 40 minutes, what happens there. You go from George Lamp and Biff, which is just so triumphant, a real punch the air moment, to Earth Angel, which is really emotional, to Johnny Be Good, which is really funny, to Doc on the clock tower, which is really tense, and then to Marty getting back to save Doc, which is really emotional again. And it all just flows together so brilliantly. And yeah, it's there on the page, but it's still another job entirely to get it from page to screen. And I think that's where Zemeckis deserves praise. So, yeah, it's not the most visually striking or impressive film you'll ever see, I think, but it doesn't need to be. It's the storytelling where this excels, and that's all down to Zemeckis.
Yeah, well, unlike you, Matt, I do actually quite like Robert Zemeckis. I do agree, though, that he's very much a Spielberg-like director.
Yeah.
There's loads of those knocking about, and I think he's easily the best of them for me. And Back to the Future is easily his best film as well. It's a great story that Zemeckis and Bob Gale came up with, and Zemeckis tells it pretty perfectly, mostly through visuals like a good director does. I think the tone that he strikes as well is perfection, balancing the comedy and the drama brilliantly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it looks superb.
Everything looks great.
The production design work to create 2 distinct hill valleys 30 years apart is stunning. The makeup work to create middle-aged Lorraine, George and Biff is great. And Zemeckis clearly worked really well with the director of photography, Dean Cundy. The camera always seems to be moving. It's quite subtle, but very fluid visually. And I know Cundy said they did that on purpose to create a sense of an unfolding story. And I think it works really well. I wouldn't say it's 100% perfect visually. I think Marty's fading hand and the animated fire that runs across the top of the cable in the climax are 2 shots that haven't aged very well.
No.
But that's no big deal breaker for me. It is very Spielberg-like in the tone and the visuals. And I would say, to be honest, that it's up there with anything by Spielberg as a film. That's how good it is.
Whoa, this is heavy.
And that's how great a job I think Robert Zemeckis did as a director. He caught lightning in a bottle for me. Fantastic.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, very much.
And Luke, Bob Z on PTTF for you.
Right. Get the acronyms right here.
Loads of acronyms there for you.
Crack that code first.
Very much the same as you fellas. It's the breakneck speed of the film that I just can't get enough of. Whips along, great balancing of tones, comedy, romance, action. Zemeckis judges the whole thing perfectly. But what gets me hooked straight away, and it's something that Matt has mentioned, is that opening of the film. That opening shot with everything in Doc's place, where we find out so much, like how many clocks has he got? They're like unusual amount of clocks. That's a big theme in the film. Obviously, it's a nod to The Time Machine from 1960. And then it's Marty's turn. We see the skateboard immediately. We know he's big into his guitar. And then
Massive
that
amp.
magnificent, huge amp. Yeah, just close-ups on the dials. And then that glorious Power of Love sequence. I couldn't be more excited by Marty hitching a ride on the back of cars on his skateboard, waving at the chicks doing their calisthenics. Amazing.
Living the dream.
Yeah, fantastic. And I really loved that as a kid, and I still love it now when that Power of Love kicks in. And it's just all incredible visual storytelling from Zemeckis. What an opening. And somehow he manages to maintain this level of detail and makes everything edge of your seat, visually exciting for near 2 hours. And top work from the big man. I think it's incredible, all distilled in that first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, he did do a brilliant job as Zemeckis, but it wasn't a smooth journey to get the film made. The idea for Back to the Future had actually came to Bob Gale when he was rummaging around in his parents' basement, and he came across his dad's old high school yearbook and wondered if they'd have been friends. Gale and Zemeckis then turned that idea into a script, and they then showed that script to their pal Steven Spielberg, who's not the worst pal to have if you're trying to get a film made.
No.
And Spielberg loved it.
Loved it.
Loved it,
indeed.
obviously.
I couldn't believe what an accomplished and fun piece of writing it was.
Spielberg was up for producing it, so to get funding, Zemeckis and Gale sent the script to basically every studio in Hollywood. The script for Back to the Future was rejected by Hollywood studios. Do you know how many times?
No.
I think it's easy double figures, wasn't it?
44 times.
Wow.
Studios
Wow.
said no. Some studios weren't comfortable with the relationship between Doc and Marty,
Is Doc Brown like a child molester or something?
and Disney said no because they said it was about incest, because a mother has the hots for her son.
Yeah.
However, Zemeckis then made Romancing the Stone, that was a massive hit, and suddenly studios wanted to make Back to the Future.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Romancing the Stone either.
Oh, yeah.
But it's got so much fun. But I can feel the spirit of that film here as well. It's got action, comedy, romance, the same as in here. Everything a grown boy needs. Perfect.
Definitely. Another visually iconic part of Back to the Future is the use of the DeLorean car as the time machine. It's so striking, in fact, that we have a Patreon question about it. So one of the benefits of being in All the Right Movies Patreon is that we'll answer your questions on the show. And James Ozzypew has a question. So here's James.
Hi guys, so my question is, where do you rank the DeLorean amongst cinema's most iconic cars? Thanks very much.
Great question from James there.
Thank you, James.
What do you think of the DeLorean, Luke?
I mean, I'm not a car person at all, really, which will probably come across in my answers here. But I've always been fascinated by the DeLorean since I was young. It's that space age design, the sleekness, and those doors that open upwards. I mean,
Great.
That was something unbelievable when I was younger. Still is. Still is. Really cool, really sexy. Always wanted to have a go on a DeLorean, and I did look into renting one a few years back. Like not being serious, just, if I wanted to, is it possible?
Right, yeah.
And it is possible, but they're about $1,500 a day.
Wow.
Really? Yeah. It does have a replica flux capacitor in there, but it's a bit much, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get a few more Patreons signing up and we'll have one of them.
Come on, guys.
Yeah. Well, a big D out in one.
Yeah. So, yeah, the DeLorean's always been up there for me, rivaled only by the Ecto 1 Ghostbusters car.
Of course.
Right.
So,
Okay.
both movie cars that are either an old banger or one that looks great but is completely unreliable. I like the imperfections.
Well, as great as the DeLorean is, Doc Brown's time machine wasn't always going to be a DeLorean. Do you know what it was originally?
What is it, a refrigerator?
Well, in the first draft of the script, the time machine was a time chamber, like
Right.
a room with a big gun in the middle, like on James Bond, that would zap Marty back in time.
Right.
That then changed to, like you say, a big old 50s style refrigerator that Marty would climb into, and then the fridge would travel back in time. Zemeckis scrapped that idea when he realised the time machine needed to be mobile, and he hired two artists, Ron Cobb and Andrew Probert, to design a DeLorean-based time machine. And they did a pretty good job, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing.
But yeah, for me, I love Ecto 1 as well. Fantastic. I also love Tim Burton's Batmobile. Brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
But it's the DeLorean, no question, for me, is movie car number one, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Matt, where's the DeLorean sit for you in the movie car Hall of Fame?
I think I would agree with you two, actually, because the thing about the DeLorean is that famously it was a flop as an actual car and the company went bust. So that makes it stand out all the more for me, because I look at it and it feels like they constructed it for this film and this film alone. I can't imagine anyone driving this in real life. I just imagine it existing in the Back to the Future universe. So that's why I'd probably put it number one as well.
Wow.
Well, one of the most famous shots in the film is around the DeLorean, where it travels through time, vanishes, and leaves behind the flaming tyre tracks.
Yeah,
ILM did the visual effects, and to create the moment where the DeLorean time travels, they did quite a bit of work. So they had two tyre tracks laid out in gasoline and set them on fire so the flames shoot up the gasoline tracks. They recorded that and sped up the footage.
Yeah.
They then recorded the stunt rider driving a DeLorean and superimposed it on top of the tyre tracks footage. The driver wore masks so he looked like Einstein. I mean, the dog, obviously, not
Yeah.
Albert.
With his tongue out.
And the point where they removed the car, they added the lightning bolts and puffs of smoke. I mean, none of it's particularly complex stuff, I don't think, but the effect it creates is just fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
I
looks
love
amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Looks incredible.
it. So the DeLorean then, a great movie car, and Bob Zemeckis, a great job on Back to the Future, and his best film, we think.
Easily.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've reached the end of part 1. Please come back for part 2, though, for a whole lot more on Back to the Future.